presence of the Lord tonight. I want to give you Merriam-Webster's definition of the word freedom. It says that freedom, and there are, as a disclaimer, there are several. If you look at Merriam-Webster, there are several different classifications of the definition of freedom. And I want to read all of them to you. It says, freedom is the power or the right to act, to speak, or to think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. I'm going to say that again. Freedom is the right or the power to act, to speak, or to think as you want to without hindrance or restraint. That's powerful. Here's another. Freedom is the absence of subjection to foreign domination or despotic government. A despot is a dictator, so despotic would be a dictatorship. So it is the absence of being subjected to foreign domination or a dictator type government. You got to listen closely. Freedom is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Freedom is the state of not being subject to or affected by a particular undesirable thing. I found another definition that's a little bit lengthier, but it says something like this. Freedom generally is having the ability to act or to change without constraint. Something is free only if it can change easily and is not constrained in or to its present state. It is only considered free if it is not constrained or limited to its current situation. If it can change or move or transition, then it is considered to be free. Still with me? In philosophy and religion, it's associated with having a free will. We are taught that man is a free moral agent. He has the ability to make up his mind. In fact, my pastor puts it this way. He said, God so values freedom that he gives you the freedom to choose even if it's against him. That's how much God values freedom. That he will allow you to choose for yourself, even if it's to choose against him. It is an idea that is closely tied with the concept of liberty. A person has the freedom to do things that will not, in theory nor in practice, be prevented by other forces. That's freedom. So then, when freedom is denied or taken, this is me talking now. When freedom is denied or taken from one, whether it be an individual, whether it be an entity, whether it be a nation, when that freedom, the ability to move as you want to move, the ability to think as you want to think, the ability to speak as you desire to speak, when that freedom is taken or denied from that entity, then the only thing left is restriction and bondage. I need you to hang with me. If, listen, the opposite of freedom is bondage. And so if there is no freedom, whether it be in a person, in a nation, in an entity, whatever it is, if there is an absence of freedom, bondage is all that's left. There's no state of being in between. You are either free or you're bound. There is no middle ground. Are you with me? Let me cite for you some examples. Do you remember when the children of Israel were in Egypt? They were not free. They were restricted. They were bound. They were limited in how they moved, in how they thought, in how they talked, in how they acted. Why? Because there was a supposed superior force that had oppressed them. I'm going real slow because I need you to stay on this train. That had oppressed them to limit their movement, their speech, and their actions. So therefore, they were no longer free to do as they pleased. No longer free to move as they pleased. They were now subject to a taskmaster, a Pharaoh, if you will, who monitored and dictated their every move. So freedom was lost. Do you know what happens when freedom is lost or freedom is taken? Tyranny takes over. Because a despotic government or a dictator type entity is a tyrannical entity. Anything that limits your freedom, anything that inhibits how you think, act, talk, or move is tyrannical, and it becomes a stumbling block or a blockade, if you will, to stop you from being you. So when the children of Israel were taken into captivity in Egypt, they were in bondage because there was an absence of freedom. Are you still with me? Listen, you remember reading in history, you remember hearing about in history the dark period in American history. And oh yes, we've made our mistakes. That dark period in American history called slavery, remember that? Bondage. To take another human being, to strip that human being of his freedom or her freedom, and to limit them and restrict them from moving and being who they want to be is called slavery or bondage. Now let me help you. It wasn't only in America. There's still slavery happening all over the world. Thank God it's not happening in America anymore. But there's any time that someone who deems himself superior over you and makes you subject to his rules and regulation and his commandments and his dictations and puts you in bondage, you have an absence of freedom. And now you can only move when he tells you to move. You can only say what he tells you to say. Are you still with me? And so now, when there's an absence of freedom, you are enslaved to whatever it is that is deemed superior over you. Can we break it down even a little further? How about an abusive marriage? How about a husband, because he deems himself superior to his wife, beats on her, and doesn't let her do anything except what he wants her to do. That's tyranny. Tyranny in the home. It's the same tyranny that the children of Israel were subjected to in 450 years of slavery in Egypt. It's the same tyranny that the African American was subjected to in America during the 1860s. It's the same tyranny that Ugandan slaves are subjected to right now on the continent of Africa. The same tyranny. Anytime one person or one entity deems themselves to be superior over another and imposes their will upon them, it is tyrannical and it is called slavery or bondage. How about, can we break it down just a little bit further? How about disease in a person's body? Right? What is our definition? Watch what it said. The absence of subjection. Freedom is the absence of subjection to foreign domination. Can I tell you something? Cancer is foreign to your body. Heart disease is foreign to your body. So when that thing sets up in your body and begins to dominate your life, there is an absence of freedom. Oh, see, we're getting real now. I'm talking about freedom. Listen, because when you are dominated by cancer or some other dreadful disease or condition, you can't do what you want to do. You don't think what you want to think. You can't move like you want to move. And so therefore you have become enslaved and in bondage to that foreign thing that has begun to dominate your body. And there is an absence of freedom. Ask anybody who's in a wheelchair if they'd really like to get up and walk. I dare say none of them would say, nah, I don't think so. I kind of like this. No, because they want to be free. They want to be free from that chair or free from that walker or free from that disease or free from that bondage, free from that restriction. Nobody likes to be restricted in what they say, in what they do, in what they think, and how they move. Nobody likes that restriction or that limitation in their life. But when there is an absence of freedom, all that's left is restriction and bondage. Let me give you the greatest freedom restrictor there is. It's called sin. Sin will cause you to lose your freedom. Sin will cause you to be enslaved and in bondage. Listen, and when freedom is lost, you're helpless, you're hopeless, you're hurting, and you feel like there is nothing that you can do about it, that you're at the end of your rope, that nothing is going right and nothing's going to change it, and you may as well get accustomed to how things are because nothing is ever going to change. You have lost your freedom. There are two types of restrictions or limitations that are placed on us, whether it be a person, whether it be an entity, whether it be a nation, whether it be a church, whatever it is. There are two types of restriction. Number one, there's a self-imposed restriction. That's when you do it to yourself. Sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it, but you're restricting, you're limiting yourself. You are stealing your own freedom by limiting yourself to what you can and cannot do. Are y'all in this place? The second type is forced tyranny from that outside foreign source, if you will. I could spend an hour and a half talking to you about the first one, self-imposed restriction, but I want to focus tonight on the second one. I want to focus on that outside dominating force. I want to focus in this series on these outside forces that limit us, that we allow to gain, you didn't hear what I said, that we allow to gain superiority over us, that we allow to dominate us. Because I need to help somebody understand that you can only be dominated by what you allow to dominate you. You can only be oppressed by what you allow to oppress you. I ain't hearing nobody say nothing, but you allow it, and that's the reason that it happens. I need to help you understand you cannot stop the enemy from attacking you, but you can stop him from dominating you. You can't stop him from unleashing his weapons against you, but I just told you Sunday that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. You are the blessed of the Lord, the highly favored. You're a child of you're kin to the King. You're related to the righteous one, and you're connected to the covering, and you have the authority over the enemy. So if something's dominating you, it's because you're letting it. And I want to talk over the course of the next few weeks. I want to talk about some of these forces that we have allowed to set up in our lives, in our churches, in our nation, in our schools. Oh, we're going to cover the whole gamut. And these forces are stealing our freedom and restricting us from doing and being what God has called us to be and to do. You still with me? So in our story, Jesus got the word that Lazarus was sick. You know the story. He waited 4 days, and the Bible said that Lazarus eventually died of the sickness that he had contracted, whatever it was. He died. He passed away. So his sickness turned to death. Watch this. Sickness and death are outside forces that are detrimental to your freedom. In fact, sickness and death could be considered the ultimate stealer or robber or thief of your freedom, because it limits you in ways that others can't. It limits you in ways that is such on such a greater level than all the other limiters and restrictors are, because sickness is something inside your body. Other forces can be arrayed against you, but sickness is arrayed inside of you. And death is the ultimate end result of sickness. And so these forces have aligned not only against you, but in you. And they have become the greatest restrictor and limiter of your freedom. Lazarus, the Bible said, died. Now we understand that Jesus had a reason for waiting. We understand why he did it. He explains it. He said, I did it so that you could see that I would get the glory for it. I did it. I waited, but so that you could see that I'm all powerful, that I have all authority. I did it for that reason. So we understand that, but what we want to deal with tonight is the fact that there was a foreign source that had invaded Lazarus' body and restricted his mobility, his thought process, his speech, and his action. And when it does that, it took away all of his freedom. And so now Lazarus was not just sick, but now he had succumbed to death, which is certainly an outside force. The Bible said it's not God's will that any should perish. Hello? Death is brought about by sin. And sin is a thief of your freedom. So when death comes, now Lazarus is dead, not just sick, but he's dead. And now he has no mobility. He has no speech, not just limited, but now he has none. He can't say what he wants to say. He can't do what he wants to do. He can't move like he wants to move. He can't even think the way he wants to think, because death has stolen his freedom. Are y'all still with me? And so now he's lying in a tomb, in a grave, in a place that they put people who have no freedom. In a tomb where they put folk whose freedom has been stolen. And Mary, watch this, both Mary and Martha on separate occasions come running up to Jesus when he comes to where Lazarus is. They come running to him, and both of them say the same thing. If you had have been here, he wouldn't have died. If you were just here, he wouldn't have died. Watch this. And we look at that usually in a negative sense. We usually look at that and say, but they don't even understand why he did what he did if they just wake up. Watch this, but I want to show you something. What it says to me is that they understood a concept. They understood a truth, an irrefutable truth. If you would have been here, Lazarus, my brother, would not have died. Watch, we usually look at it as them throwing accusations at Jesus. Why weren't you here? But I don't see it that way. Here's how I see it. Jesus, I know that if you had been here with all of your power and all of your glory and all of your might, if the power of the God of all creation had been standing in front of Lazarus, there is no death. Death would have lost its sting, and grave would have lost its victory. And I know that if you had been standing here, Lazarus wouldn't have died, because death can't do nothing when you're around. So they recognized something that the other folk didn't recognize. They recognized that he, watch, was the ultimate authority over this outside dominating force that had stolen the freedom. Hang with me a few more minutes, can you? Watch this. Freedom, or the regaining of a stolen freedom, demands a deliverer. To get freedom back, it demands a deliverer. What Mary and Martha saw that nobody else saw was that Jesus was the deliverer. Watch this. Let me see if I can help you. Jesus, if you would have been here, Lazarus would not have lost his freedom. Why? Because you're the deliverer. And the stealing of freedom, the denial of freedom, watch, or tyranny, demands a deliverer. Here's what God said to a young man who was on the backside of the wilderness keeping his father-in-law's flock. He said, I need you to get up from where you are, go back to Egypt, and you tell Pharaoh to let my people go. You know what God was doing? God said, I need you to go and be the deliverer of the people. Why? Because they lost their freedom. Their freedom was taken. Their freedom was denied. They're limited. They're restricted. And I've got to have somebody to go down into Egypt and stand up to Pharaoh and tell them to let my people go. I need a deliverer. I got to have somebody that in the face of tyranny will stand up and say, give me back my freedom. Joshua, go into the promised land and take it. It's yours. But wait a minute, God, it belongs to all those other people. There's all kind of folk. No. You don't understand what I'm saying. Go get it. It's yours. But if I do that, they gonna whip us. They gonna array against us in battle, and they have such superior forces and such great numbers, and they're so big, and such weaponry, and their cities and their fortresses are so great, and all of this stuff, and they could put us under subjection. And God said, I need a deliverer. I need somebody. Listen, I used Moses to bring them out, but I've got to have somebody to take them in. I used Moses to deliver them out of Egypt, but I've got to have somebody that will deliver them into the promised land. I need somebody that will stand up to the Canaanites and the Amalekites and the Hittites. I need somebody that will demand them to loose their freedom and let it go. I need somebody that will stand up to the tyranny. Because God created you to be free. He did not create you with an inherent, incessant need for bondage or restriction. That's an outside dominating despotic force. That's a tyrannical force that has taken root in your life because you allowed something to get superiority over you. It is not God-given. Freedom is God-given. Liberty is God-given. He created you to be free. He created you to think like he wanted you to think and speak like you're supposed to speak and walk like you need to walk. He created you a free moral agent. Somebody just shout right now, I'm free. There was a war fought in this little fledgling nation called the United States of America. It's called the Revolutionary War. You know why it was called that? Because it was a revolution. You know what a revolution is? Do you know what RPMs are on a car? Some of you probably don't even know what RPM means. You don't even look at it. Revolutions per minute. What's a revolution? How your wheels are turning on its axle. How many revolutions that wheel makes per minute. So in other words, the faster you go, the more revolutions that wheel makes on that axle. Are you with me? Watch. And it was called the Revolutionary War because there was a revolution. What is a revolution? A turning over. Y'all ain't in here. A turning over of something. Just like a wheel spinning on an axle. The founding fathers of America said we've got to change some stuff. We are being oppressed. We are being restricted. We are being limited. There's a tyrannical government that is oppressing us and putting their thumb on us and holding us down. But if we're going to do anything, we've got to create a revolution. Can I help you understand something? When Jesus came to this people planet, he didn't come like some little mild little baby or lamb. He came as a revolutionary. He came to turn over the apple cart of the enemy. He came to throw over the money changer's table. He came to upset the religious system. Are y'all in this place with me on a Wednesday night? He came to turn stuff upside down. In fact, the Bible said when the apostles and the disciples in the book of Acts began to go through the city and preach the gospel, that the leaders of the people said, these are they which have turned the world upside down. Where are the people that are free? Where are the people walking in freedom? Where are the revolutionaries? Where are the people that will stand up to the despots and the dictator? Where are the people who will stand up to oppressive governments and oppressive entities and devils and demons and look them square in the eye and say, we're going to start a revolution. We're not going to take it standing still, but we're going to turn this thing over, baby. Get ready for war. One of the greatest historical revolutionary movies you could ever watch is called The Patriot. You know what Benjamin Martin did? He said, if nobody else will stand up to him, I will. Somebody has to stand up. Somebody has to keep the RPMs moving. Somebody's got to keep the wheel turning. And all it takes is one. Jesus, one, took 12. That made 13. In the upper room, 13 became 120. After the day of Pentecost, 120 became 3,000. Y'all not hearing me? After the 3,000 came 5,000. You're not hearing me. And pretty soon it became tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions. And the revolution is still going. We're still spinning. The wheel's still turning on its axle because there is a demand for a deliverer. When the despot comes on the scene, when the dictator raises his ugly head, when the devil raises up in your life, it demands a deliverer. I don't know if I got anybody But there's got to be somebody that will stand up and declare the truth of the Word of God in the face of adversity, in the face of the enemy. And if I got to stand by myself, I'll stand and having done all to stand. And if I got to shout it from the rooftops, I'll raise my voice like a trumpet and cry loud and spare not. This is the Word of God, and I will not move from it. This is my revolution. Somebody, there's got to be some Moses. There's got to be some Joshuas. There has to be some Jesuses. There's got to be some apostles, some disciples, some Pauls and some Peters and some Timothys. I can see Peter now as he sliced off that ear in the garden. And Jesus told him to put his sword away, reached over and put the ear back on the head of that soldier. But I can almost see Jesus as he turns his head with a big smile on his face. I can see Jesus trying to hide that grin because not one of the other disciples did one thing. Y'all ain't hearing me. And Peter, old brash, bold, cussing Peter took his sword out and said, I'll stand. If nobody else stands, I'm going to do whatever I got to do. I'll create a revolution. And I can see Jesus, now, Peter, that ain't the way we doing it, but man, I sure appreciate you. Man, you sure got a heart for the battle. Man, you ready to go. Y'all ain't in this place. I wish there was a church in 2021 that would pull their sword and cut off the ear of the soldier and say, I'm going to stand, and having done all to stand, I will be the revolutionary that turns the wheel on the axle. There's got to be somebody who will stand. Because tyranny, the loss of freedom, demands a deliverer. I know you've heard it before, but I'm going to say it again. This one little phrase, freedom is not free. It's going to cost you something. That's why there's not very many revolutionaries. That's why there's not too many Benjamin Martins. That's why there's not too many Moseses or Joshuas. That's why there's no Jesuses running around too much on the earth, because nobody wants to pay the price. It will cost you something. You can't go into the battle and expect not to get wounded. There's a famous quote. I don't know who said it. If you know, you can tell me later. I don't know who said it, or even if anybody said it, it may just be public domain. I don't know, but it says something like this. It said, I would rather live in freedom than die in tyranny. Or I would rather die in freedom than live in tyranny. I would rather die being free than I would live a cowardly life being oppressed by an outside agitator and a force that I've allowed to be superior over my life. Tell your neighbor it's going to cost you. There are deterrents to your deliverance. Moses had Pharaoh. Remember? Let my people go. You're crazy. Get out of here. Let my people go. Whatever. Let my people go. Not a chance. And he kept throwing blockade after blockade and restriction, after restriction and limitation, after limitation. And he said, I will not give back their freedom. I've got them, and I'm not about to let them loose now. Joshua had his Jericho. The walls are so great. They're giants in the land. They so greatly outnumber us, and they're so greatly superior to us. They have superior weaponry and superior arsenals, and there's no way that we can ever do it. Just keep marching. Just keep turning the wheel on the axle. Keep moving. I know it looks like you're outnumbered, but just keep moving. I know Pharaoh said he'll never let him go, but just keep going back. Keep turning the wheel on the axle. Keep letting the revolution move forward. I wish I had half a church. Just keep going. Don't ever stop. Don't ever let up. Don't ever give in. Keep pressing. Keep pushing. Keep fighting. Keep struggling. When you got blood streaming out your face, keep on pushing forward. When you're walking with a limp and dragging your leg behind you, keep pushing forward. When you got to crawl like the woman with the issue of blood, just keep moving. Don't let anything ever stop you, because the stakes are too high. Too much is hanging in the balance. You got to have a deliverance. You can't afford to give up now. If you ever gonna get your freedom back, you gotta get your deliverance. If you ever gonna get your freedom back, you got to keep pushing. Don't give up, Moses. Don't quit now. Don't stop, Joshua, because the walls of the city are great. Keep pushing, keep trying, keep fighting. If you're like the boxer that's punch drunk on the ropes, just keep standing, and having done all to stand, do whatever you gotta do to stay on your feet, because the revolution has to keep going. You got to keep the wheel turning on the axle. You can't stop now, church. We've come too far. It's been too long. We've had too many victories to stop now. I got to keep going. I got to keep pushing. I got to keep fighting. I'm not there yet. Victory's not mine yet. I got to keep pushing. Come on, Moses. One more time. Because tyranny, despotism demands a deliverer. Don't stop, Joshua. Don't stop, Jesus. I know you don't want to go to the cross, but don't stop. I know your sweat became like great drops of blood in the Garden of Gethsemane and the wine press as the very life was being pressed out of you, but don't stop now. I know the cross is heavy as you walk up Golgotha's hill, but don't quit. Because tyranny has to be defeated. Don't stop. You've got to regain the freedom of the people. Don't quit. Keep going. Because if I don't keep going, the Liberty Bell will never ring again. There will always be somebody or something to block your miracle, to block your deliverance, to block your success, to block your victory. There will always be a deterrent, whether it be a thing or a person. There will always be something to try to stop you in your tracks. There will always be a Jericho. There will always be a Pharaoh. There will always be a Goliath that will try to stand in your way. There will always be a fiery furnace and a lion's den. There will always be a Caesar. There will always be a cross and a Golgotha and a Calvary to stand in your way, but keep going. I wish you'd just high five your neighbor and say, just keep going. Don't quit now. You've come too far to stop now. If you knew what I come through, you'd understand why I can't stop. If you knew what I've been taken out of, you'd understand why I got to keep the revolutions moving, why I've got to keep the wheels spinning on the axle. Too much is at stake. Somebody's waiting on me to finish the race. Somebody's waiting on me to deliver them out of their hell. Somebody's waiting on me to preach the word to them. Somebody's waiting on me to lay hands on them so the sick can be recovered. I can't quit. I got to keep the revolution going. I got to keep marching. I got to keep moving. It's too late. I can't turn back. Victory lies ahead. Victory is mine. Don't quit. Don't quit. Don't stop. He said, Jesus said, move the stone. What stone? The stone that's blocking. The stone that's trying to keep me from delivering Lazarus. The stone that stands in my way of my miracle. The stone that's trying to stop me from getting to the other side. He said, get it out of the way. You got to roll that sucker out of the way, because ain't nothing gonna stop me from getting to the other side now. Ain't nothing gonna stop me from getting my freedom back. They tried to steal it. They tried to take it like the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The devil comes to try to steal my freedom, try to take my liberty, try to set himself up to be superior and a tyrant over my life. But the devil is a liar. Get the stone out of the way. I got to move the stone. With somebody, take your hand and just start moving stuff out your way. Get the woman with the issue of blood said, I know I ain't supposed to be here, but get out of my way. I know I'm ostracized. I know I'm looked down on. I know I don't have strength in my body, but excuse me while I get to my miracle. Excuse me while I get to my deliverance. I got to push somebody out the way. I got to get through whatever I need to get. Somebody got to move out of. My situation demands a deliverer. He tried to take my freedom. He tried to take my joy. He tried to take my peace. He tried to take my anointing. He tried to take my health. He tried to take my money. He tried to take my children. And it demands a deliverance. And I've got to move whatever I need to move out of. I dare somebody to give God a 30-second praise. Come on and let freedom ring. You thought you had me, devil. You thought you had me, sickness. You thought you had me, disease. You thought you had me, poverty. You thought you had me, drugs. You thought you had me, alcohol. You thought you had me, prostitution. You thought you had me, pornography. You thought you had whatever it is. You thought you had me, but my deliverer stood in the gap and said, get the stone out and loose him and let him go. Just about the time that the enemy tried to run off with my freedom, the deliverer stepped up in the gap. He stood in between the devil and my life, and he said, give it back. You got to give it. Give all the freedom back. Give all the joy back. Give. Don't give up. Somebody's depending on you. Jesus said, loose him and let him go. You know what he's saying? give him his freedom back. Give him his liberty back. You know what I hear? I hear the deliverer standing in the gap in 2021, looking the devil square in the eye and saying, give the church her freedom back. Give the church her joy back. Give the church her anointing. Give her her power back. You tried to run off like a thief and steal their freedom. But I'm the Joshua. I'm the Moses. I'm the deliverer. Give it back. And Jesus stood between death and life and said, death, give it back. Give it all back. Because here's what John 8:32 said, and ye shall know the truth. And the truth. See, King James made a little mistake because it should be a capital T on the word truth. And you shall know the truth. No. You shall know the deliverer. And the deliverer shall make you free. I don't know if I got any free folk up in this house. I don't know if anybody knows what it's like to be bound and your deliverer stood between you and death. I don't know if anybody in here knows what it's like to be restricted and limited and oppressed and pushed down and held back and stomped on and run over and talked about and made fun of and stabbed in the back. I don't know if I'm talking to anybody, but if you're in this house, I want you to jump up on your feet and shout for your deliverer. Shout because you were bound, but now you're free. Shout up in this. I dare you to shout up in this house on a Wednesday night. Give him glory. Give him, lift him up. Lift him up. He's my deliverer. He's my truth. He's my way maker. He's my miracle worker. He's my revolutionary. And he stands in the gap. Look at somebody and say, I win. I win. I win. I win. I win. The battle ain't even over, but I win. I'm still going through hell, but I win. I got my freedom back. I win. I still gotta fight the fight, but I win. Let freedom ring. I'm no longer bound. I'm free. I win. I win. I win. What's the devil gonna do with a bunch of winners? Let freedom ring. I'm not going to be bound and oppressed by the limitations of some foreign force that thinks he's a tyrant and superior over my life. Because my deliverer is in the house. Let me tell you something. I know exactly why that the enemy has fought me so hard over the past 6 months. Because the man of God, the prophet, stood and told me in my face, he said, I see there's a deliverance anointing on your life. He said, I see God putting a deliverance anointing on your life. That when you lay hands on the sick, they will recover. When you cast out devils, they got to go. You ain't hearing me. And the enemy heard those words and tried to come like a thief in the night, trying to steal my freedom, trying to steal my health, trying to steal my sanity, trying to steal my money, trying to steal my joy, trying to steal my faith, trying to steal my anointing. I got some news for the devil. Here I stand, because my deliverer showed up and said, loose him and let him go. And I got news for you, devil. Today ain't my day to die. Freedom is so valuable that if the enemy can get your freedom, if he can steal your freedom, then he can steal everything else you got. Because he knows how valuable it is. He knows that God created you as a free being. And today, we find ourselves in a time. We find ourselves in a season where there is a rapid erosion of individual freedom. In unprecedented fashion, there are those who would like to steal, kill, and destroy every ounce of freedom that you have. Tell your neighbor, you got to fight for it. They want to destroy the very foundation upon which we as a people and we as a nation were built in the first place. Just like the devil that tries to steal, kill, and destroy our soul. There are those who wish to oppress us and subdue us and keep us quiet and shut us up and take our freedom. There are those who wish to be tyrants over the church, over God's people, over a nation, and over you individually. We are in, make no mistake about it, we're in a struggle of epic proportions. We're in a battle for the very existence of our nation, of our churches, of our very freedoms. This is not a battle with tanks and aircraft carriers. This is a spiritual struggle. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but what they are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds arrayed against us. Make no mistake, they want your freedom. There are tyrants, there are despots, there are socialist progressives who are trying to steal the very fabric of your freedom and rip it in shreds. Somebody has to take a stand. The church must take a stand. If we are ever going to hear the Liberty Bell ring again, somebody has to be a revolutionary. Somebody has to keep the wheel spinning on the axle. Somebody has to be unafraid and unashamed. I don't know about you, but I'm one. I will not bend and I will not bow. And I refuse to kowtow to the political correctness of this age. And I will stand in the face of the devil, and I will stand in the face of a government and anybody else that wants to listen and declare that I am free. And I will remain free because my deliverer came to my tomb and said, loose him and let him go. And in closing tonight, here's what I want to say to you. We are in a moment in time that if we are ever going to save our nation, we as a church has to stand up. We've got to stop allowing these foreign forces, whether they be in this country or out, they're still foreign. They're foreign to the concept of freedom. When I took an oath in the United States Army, I said all enemies, foreign and domestic. Can I tell you something? As a soldier, Brother Jerry, am I right? As a soldier, that oath never goes away. And I stand by it today, both naturally and spiritually. I will defend this nation, and I will defend the Church of the Living God from all enemies, foreign and domestic, from all tyrants, from all despots. And I'm not afraid, and I'm not ashamed. We're living in a time where silence is not an option. Our voice has to be heard. We need to cry loud and spare not. We need to lift our voice like a trumpet and regain our freedom. If we're ever going to let freedom ring, it must start now. I want to read you something. I want to read something real quick, and then I want to show you something, and then I'm going to let you go. See if you recognize this. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, somebody say freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Abolish what? Alter what? The government that becomes oppressive and tyrannical, that stands in superiority over them. To alter and abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. You recognize that? That's the first two paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, written in 1776. As they struggled against tyranny. Can I read you something else? You might recognize this too. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. You know what that is? That's the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Did you hear what it said? Congress shall make no law that will establish a particular religion, but it also cannot prohibit the free exercise thereof. Can just hit the rewind button to March 2020, when everybody in the country was going crazy. And they said, we've got to shut them down. We got to shut the churches down. Who said it? The government. And guess what? Most of the churches shut down. In fact, I was driving just the other day by one of the biggest churches in the state of Texas. And as far as I know, it's still shut down. 40,000 members. And it's still shut down. Because they lost their freedom. Don't tell me it's about anything else. Don't tell me it's about safety. You're a liar. It's about suppressing and oppressing the people. It's about stealing your freedom. And if somebody don't stand up, we'll lose it all. Do you think they'll stop at shutting the church down? If they get by with that, they'll get by with everything. Do you think wearing a mask, do you think that's about your safety? Do you think the mask mandate's about safety? Listen, I don't give a flip whether you wear a mask or not. That's not my point. It doesn't bother me if you wear a mask. But do you think that's about your safety? Let me educate you. Because I went through an airport on the way to Columbus. First time I wore a mask to this whole blessed thing other than the time we flew to Denver. Because if you don't, you can't get on the plane. But I went through the airport. Watch this. And I saw people with blue paper masks. I wear one of them. I put on one of them gaiters, a neck gaiter, right? Cloth. People with bandanas, people with scarves. This one lady had on a mesh mask. Okay? Watch this. As long as you covered your face, they let you on the plane. If it was truly about safety, they would put out a government approved, CDC approved, FDA approved, whatever, mask that had filters and all kinds of stuff to keep you safe. But as long as you got your face covered, no, y'all ain't hearing me. They don't care, because it's not about your safety. It's about suppression. You can't tell me that a neck gaiter is going to be safe for me if COVID really floats through the air like they say it does. You can't tell me a little paper mask is going to keep you safe. Do you know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen pictures of women in Afghanistan? Y'all can't hang with me. You can't hang with me. They got everything covered but their eyes. Do you know why they don't cover their eyes? Because they want to see the fear in them. And those Muslim countries have so subjected their women to despotic and tyrannical control that they make them wear face covering. You ask any Afghani woman if she would rather be free from that face covering, and she would say absolutely yes. But because of despotic and tyrannical control, they put a face covering on them, because if your face is covered, your mouth is covered. And if your mouth is covered, you can't speak like you're supposed to. Y'all ain't hearing me. It's not anything to do about your safety. It's all about controlling you and keeping you some mind-numb robot under the control of a tyrannical government. So, I can't breathe in them stupid things anyhow. So, America, if you want to walk around in bondage, you ever order something from behind the counter and then people got, I have to ask them like 3 times, what'd you say? If you want to stay in bondage, go ahead. Let the enemy take your freedom. But I will stand against any enemy, foreign or domestic. Y'all ain't as cool as I am. Y'all can't hang with me. And I refuse to bow to the whims of a tyrant. If you really want to keep yourself safe and you think a mask would do it, by all means wear one, but please go get one that is really a mask that will keep you safe. Don't think these little paper things and cloth things are going to keep you from getting COVID. You have lost your mind if you think that. Go get a real mask. When I was in the Army, they gave us NBC uniform, nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. I hated that stuff. You had that big old mask that you put on your head with them big old filters on the side, and your lenses would fog up, and you trying to be out there in the battlefield with that stuff. I hated that stuff. But watch this. But when I went in that gas chamber, I loved it. Why? Because it kept the stuff from getting in. So if they really wanted to keep you safe, and that's what it was about, they give everybody one of them. Again, I don't care if you wear a mask. I ain't preaching against masks. Do what you want. That's called freedom. I'm going to do what I want. That's called freedom. But I'm just trying to educate you. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And that's another one they want to take away from. They have focused on these first two. Because they can take these. Are y'all okay? If they can take the first two, they can get all the rest of the 10. Can I tell you something? I'm closing. I promise I am. I want to show you something before I close, though. But can I tell you something before I show you something? You need to understand that if you are a common sense American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, I don't care what you Purple Party, I don't care. Whatever you call yourself, it don't make any difference. If you have common sense, and if you love America, and you value freedom, you are in the crosshairs of the political progressive socialist left. Make no mistake about it. Well, I'm a Democrat. Well, they don't like you either. Not if you got common sense. What does that mean, Pastor? That means that they want to put their thumb on you and suppress you. Anybody watch the election results from the state of Virginia last night? Do you know that that the progressive left lost their ever-loving mind when the Republican candidate won? They lost their mind. They lost it. Why? Because he was a Republican? No, because he had common sense. They don't care. They don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican or an independent. They don't want you thinking for yourself. Are y'all hearing me? There's just as much Looney Tunes Republicans and independents as there are Democrats. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But if you have common sense and you love and value freedom, they hate you. They hate you. They do not want you to succeed. In fact, they don't even want you breathing. Somebody has to take a stand. This is not political. Nothing I've said is political. It's factual. We need a deliverer to say, loose America and let her go. Loose the church and let her go. He's here tonight. Listen, but you're going to have to fight. When Lazarus came out of the tomb, he was still bound in grave clothes, but he still came out. How? Because even though he was bound, he had life. And he said, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can do to get out there where he is. And he came out bound. It wasn't easy, but he fought until he got out. You have to be a soldier. You have to be a soldier. Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to fight for freedom? You have to be a soldier. Drop the lights, please, and show the video, and I'm done. You can leave after this. Don't leave before it. If you do, I'll arrest you.
To keep our freedom, we must come together. You are dismissed. We love you guys. Make sure you're back tomorrow night at 7. Women, you are invited.